Welcome into the Commanders Report. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Head coach Dan Quinn says that Jayden Daniels is in consideration to play this week after dislocating his elbow a few weeks back, which is kind of a remarkable turnaround for the Commanders' starting quarterback. He has been at practice recently, throwing the football with his teammates, but he's obviously not been a full participant. He is not cleared for contact, and Dan Quinn said earlier today that he is going to be evaluating Daniels' performance throughout the week. And of course, you'll need that clearance for contact by Friday's practice. If he's able to practice in full by Friday, he will have a chance to play as early as this week versus the Minnesota Vikings. So definitely keep your eye on that as the week goes on here, guys. I do think that Daniels will probably sit one more week at least. I think that the Commanders are going to be cautious with their franchise quarterback, and rightfully so. The season is over. And, whenever Jayden gets back to 100%, absolutely bring him back. But if he's not fully ready to go, if there's any sort of risk for further injury, Daniels should still be on the bench until he gets back to that 100% status. But certainly looking forward to seeing him back. I think that he'll probably be back next week, not this week, and I'm expecting Marcus Mariota to get at least one more start here in the 2025 season before Daniels returns. So kick off today's show here by predicting it for me down there in the comment section. Will Jayden Daniels play this week for the Washington Commanders? Give me a yes or a no. My prediction is no, but according to Dan Quinn, there is a chance this week. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Speaking of some injury updates here for the Washington Commanders, it looks like Noah Brown, who has been missing from this team since week 2, he's been dealing with a groin injury. He's been working his way back in practice ever since the Madrid game. It appears that he will be back this week. It sounds like he was somewhat close to playing last week. Now it's gotten to a point where Dan Quinn and this coaching staff and the medical staff in Washington feel good about Noah Brown's ability to suit up this week versus the Minnesota Vikings, which means this will be the first week. I mean, God forbid, knock on wood here. Hopefully there's no injury that pops up during the week. But if Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, and Noah Brown make it to the end of the week here without getting any sort of setback or new injury, that means this will be the first time that the Washington Commanders will have their starting wide receiver trio fully available to them since week 2, when this team unfortunately lost versus the Green Bay Packers, and there was a number of injuries in that game. Jayden Daniels, Noah Brown, of course, Dietrich Wise, some of these Austin Eckler, some of these other injuries that ended up popping up there in that week 2 game. And that was really the beginning of the end, in my opinion, for the Washington Commanders here in 2025. And then also during Dan Quinn's press conference earlier today, he hinted that he will be retaining defensive play calling duties in 2026 and beyond. Of course, he took over defensive play calling duties from Joe Witt Jr. earlier this season. And over the last 2 games where the Commanders have played with DQ calling the plays, the defense has immediately looked so much better. And, he's one of the better play callers in the league, in my opinion. And because of that, I think the Commanders as an organization here should use that to their advantage. I mean, one of the reasons why you go out and get a Dan Quinn, who is one of the better defensive minds in football, is that, you can use that mind to your advantage. And the best way to make sure Dan Quinn's defensive vision is being realized is if Dan Quinn himself is calling those plays. Now, I know DQ has said that, he would prefer not to call defensive plays so he can keep his focus on some other things and not spread himself out too thin. And I certainly think if the right candidate comes along where he really believes in somebody to call the plays, he might give those play calling duties to that coach. But I think, with the way things are looking better for the Washington Commanders defense with him calling plays, as well as his long track record of being one of the better defensive play callers in football, I just think moving forward, I think that this is probably the way that Dan Quinn should approach this moving forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do calling plays for the Washington Commanders, especially when we get Trey Amos back, especially when, he can retool that edge rusher group next season, and retool this defense as a whole. I'm excited to see what the future holds for the defense here in Washington. So true or false? Let me know down there in the comment section for today's pin question. Dan Quinn is a top 10 defensive play caller in the NFL today. Give me a T if you think that statement is true, or an F if you think it's false. Like I mentioned, guys, this is the pin comment on today's show, so in just a a second here. I'm going to tell you about our sponsor. Well, I tell you about our sponsor today. Give me a T for true or F for false. And if you guys want to get a Jayden Daniels jersey for yourself or somebody that you love this holiday season, you guys can get his jersey right now. Go to chatsports.com/Daniels. Of course, JD will be back in the starting lineup here sooner rather than later. Might even be this week, as we discussed on today's show. So if you guys want to get a JD jersey right now, you guys can use our link, chatsports.com/Daniels. If you use that link and you make a purchase, part of the proceeds do go back to us here at the Commanders Report, and that money helps us pay for equipment and new graphics and all the different stuff we need to pay for here at Chat Sports to make sure that this content is free for you guys to enjoy. So whether you want the traditional burgundy or white, whether you want the Super Bowl era jersey, whether you want the black alternate, we got them all on our website right now. You guys can go to chatsports.com/Daniels to pick up your jersey today. Now there's some more smoke here surrounding wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk and his impending divorce with the San Francisco 49ers here and his connection to Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported today, or actually earlier this week, he actually listed the Commanders in a recent article as the quote-unquote team to watch to land Aiyuk during the 2026 offseason. He said one team to potentially watch for Aiyuk is Washington. He was close with quarterback Jayden Daniels, his former teammate at Arizona State, and general manager Adam Peters, a John Lynch disciple from his time in San Francisco, understands the Aiyuk experience as well. And I would even add to that Deebo Samuel is also a former teammate of Brandon Aiyuk. Now, obviously, Deebo is on a one-year deal. He would have to re-sign with the Commanders, but it wouldn't shock me at all if the Commanders' two moves in free agency at wide receiver this year is to bring back Deebo Samuel as the gadget piece in this offense and then also bring in Brandon Aiyuk as the new number 2 receiver to Terry McLaurin in this Commanders offense. This is exactly what I've been saying, guys, over the last couple weeks, ever since that report came out that Aiyuk and the Niners were heading towards an impending divorce. It just makes all the sense in the world. The Commanders have cap space to pay him, and that might beg the question for you guys at home, what is the contract going to look like with Brandon Aiyuk? Because he's 2 years removed from an all-pro caliber season, where, of course, he was an all-pro and, helped led the 49ers to the Super Bowl and all that different stuff. And, but he's coming off, major knee reconstruction surgery, and he's had some issues, off the field. And, he hasn't even played a single down in the National Football League since that knee reconstruction. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding Brandon Aiyuk that could drive down his value. Now, because, the cap is continuously going up and wide receiver contracts are continuously going up, I do still think Aiyuk will get $25 to even $30 million per season on his next deal, but I don't think a lot of that is going to be guaranteed because of the antics off the field, because of the knee reconstruction surgery. If he's not up to snuff in, say, year one, a team is not going to want to have 2-3 years of guarantees where they're locked into his contract for multiple seasons. So I think that, it might be a multiple-year contract because I do think Aiyuk would want to spend multiple years here in Washington, and I think Jayden will be pushing quite hard for the Commanders to sign his best friend and add him to the roster here so he can play with his buddy once again. So my guess is it would be somewhere in between the range of $25 to $30 million because when he's healthy, he's proven that he's that level of receiver, but there won't be a lot of guaranteed money on that deal, so that if at any point the Commanders want to cut bait with Brandon Aiyuk for whatever reason, whether it's an on-field reason or off-field reason, they have the ability to do so. But now talking about our last topic on today's slate of Commanders news and rumors, Dane Brugler, the excellent draft analyst for The Athletic, just released his first mock draft of the draft season, and with the 6th overall pick, he has the Commanders taking Miami edge rusher Ruben Bain Jr. With that draft selection. This is what Dane had to say about Ruben Bain, and then also about the fit with the Washington Commanders. He says, with a dense, short-arm body type, Bain doesn't have the frame you traditionally see from pass rushers drafted this early, but it is hard to ignore the ways he uses get-off, power, and natural leverage to pressure the quarterback and shut down the run. His play style reminds me of Brandon Graham. Then when it comes to the fit specifically with the Commanders, he says the Commanders need to get younger and more talented on defense, and Bain would help in both areas. With a unique body type and relatively short arms, he isn't universally loved by NFL teams, but Dan Quinn will be intrigued by his get-off quickness, powerful hands, and relentless motor. Now, personally, guys, I'd be okay with this pick. Now, if you're going to be, not trading down, I would want you to get a pretty darn special player just because you don't have a lot of early draft capital. So if you can trade down and still get a really good player in the first round, plus maybe get some additional draft capital, that might be my more preferred option there. But Bain's a good player, no question about it. Good run defender and pass rusher. Like Dane said, he does remind a lot of people of Brandon Graham just because of the way that he is built. And Graham has been, over the years, a very productive defensive lineman. But is he worth the 6th overall pick, and is he worth giving up multiple opportunities to trade down? I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case. If you're going to spend a pick that early, and Arvell Reese, for example, is there, somebody that compares, physically speaking, to a guy like maybe Micah Parsons coming out of Penn State, somebody that can be that versatile, blitzing, off-ball linebacker type, or even be a future convert to defensive end like Micah was, I could see Reese being, that next guy that Dan Quinn takes on. He did a phenomenal job with Parsons in Dallas, moving him around the formation. I mean, in his rookie season, Parsons had a legitimate case for Defensive Player of the Year, not just Defensive Rookie of the Year, which of course he ended up winning. So I think Dan Quinn would be the perfect coach to take a talent like Arvell Reese, who's one of the more physically imposing and gifted prospects we've seen in a long time at off-ball linebacker, probably since Parsons, honestly, and see what he can do in this Washington Commanders defense. But the reality of the situation, guys, is that Washington is likely to trade down because of the lack of, high-end draft capital. They do have some picks on day 3. They got 4 of them, 2 of them in round 6, but they only have 2 picks in the top 100 picks, which is really where you find your starters. And there's going to be teams, especially if the Commanders are sitting in that 6th pick kind of range that they are right now, or even higher than that, there's going to be a lot of teams trying to trade up for quarterbacks. There's going to be a lot of players that are going to be, very coveted by teams trying to trade up inside that top 10. And the Commanders can get some nice draft capital in return for that and kind of make up for some of these picks that they have sent elsewhere in trades for guys like Marshawn Lattimore and Laramie Tunsil over the years. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. What should the Commanders do in round 1 next spring? Type U if you would trade up, type S if you would stay put, or type D if you would trade down. If I were you, I'd be typing my D for trade down. I think that's the smartest way to start building up this roster and getting this team some more young talent. But let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. That'll be it for today's slate of Commanders news and rumors. Thank you guys for stopping by today. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, hail to the Commanders.